You got to stretch the hell out of your people for the next 6 months and don't add permanent infrastructure until we get 6 more months under our belt to see, is this going to be permanent, or is this just that bump that was paused and came back and then now you settle into core?
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a 7-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and today I have Greg Crabtree back on. He wrote the book on Simple Numbers 2.0, and he helps all kinds of businesses around the country know their numbers better, know how to make better decisions when it comes to the financial side of their business. And I wanted to bring him back onto the show today. He's been on many times, but bring him back on the show because President Trump, he's coming, right? And we have a majority Republican Senate, House, and even Supreme Court now. So I'm very curious to see your thoughts, Greg, for us out there in the landscaping, hardscaping, and outdoor living world, how this might affect the next year or even beyond that. I'd love to see some of the things you're seeing out there.
Yeah, a lot of it is certainly, it's in the oven baking, and some of it's still in the recipe stage. But here's the basic belief. We've seen everybody kind of sitting on their hands for the last 6 to 9 months. And so the first bump that you're going to see in the next 6 to 9 months is core activity plus what didn't get done in the last 6 to 9 months. So the first thing is don't take that bump that's happening even as we speak. I mean, there's literally leads are up immediately, post-election. So that tells you that there's emotion in the market. There's plenty of cash. Now, it depends on the world in which you serve. If you're serving the bottom 50% of the wage earner customer market, they're still struggling with debt at this point because we've got the highest rate of consumer debt exposure at the moment ever. Their wages are probably not going to change dramatically overnight, but we're going to see a pickup certainly in the labor market, and there will be some of those people garner wage increases, in those things. So, but I wouldn't, if your target market is the bottom 50% of the consumers, it's still going to be muted. The top 50%, those people probably still are not at the edge of their credit exposure. We'll see if interest rates give us a little bit of favor. Fed cut interest rates yesterday, another 1/4 point, but mortgage rates have stubbornly stayed high. And so, from that standpoint, we're still, until the mortgage rates drop in the low 5s to high 4s, you're not going to see big deals in the construction space on average. You're going to see smaller deals that can be covered by HELOC or out-of-pocket cash, projects. But you will see projects. You will see these people moving ahead because they're just an emotional release of, hey, I've been sitting on my hands, let's catch up, in that process. I think overall the thing that everybody needs to understand and is that we still are in an economic environment with a restricted population. I mean, certainly Trump's decisions on immigration and immigration enforcement are going to be closely watched. So if Trump starts removing illegal immigrants that are not the bad people, there's a lot of illegal immigrants that are perfectly fine people that are doing perfectly good work that the construction industry needs right now. Okay, that will create an escalation and a temporary, inflationary move to the cost of building projects if you take a lot of those workers that have kind of filtered into the workforce out rapidly. And so a lot of it will be, watch for how they do immigration enforcement of people that are already here, in that. If they don't aggressively do that, then we're going to be fine. And then it's a question of what their policy is to let people in, because we still need to let people in. If you take the 3 million people estimated that came across the border illegally last year, U.S. would have gone backwards in total population. And so just put on your simple economist hat. If we have a shrinking population, what does the economy do in total? It goes down.
Yep.
But not necessarily bad because, oh, by the way, everybody's got a job. So just understand, going down isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I look at it as, is everybody busy? Is everybody employed? So from that standpoint, the U.S. is in a very interesting position that we can benefit to the rest of the world's problems, in that we're still the most attractive place in the world for people to come to. And if we are smart with our inbound immigration, we can actually counterbalance the situation the rest of the world's in. I did a talk in Dubai 2 months ago. I did a talk in Australia last month. And, it's one of those things that those countries are facing similar problems and challenges in economic growth. And we just have a lot more going for us. Yeah. And so I think from that standpoint, I'll be interested to see if they play the cards correctly. I'm scared anytime somebody has total control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and the judiciary, and get the word out. I think the Supreme Court will play things pretty straight up. But I think the margins in the Senate and the House are still fairly thin, so that you're not going to get probably crazy things through. But the good thing is, I think qualified business income deduction, which you may not realize what this benefit is, but almost everybody listening to this that's an S corporation or a partnership, you're essentially getting a 20% rate reduction from a 37% top rate to a 30% effective rate by that qualified business income deduction. That was going to expire. That almost 100% certain that will get renewed. The other thing that will help a lot of contractors is more than likely they will push through 100% bonus depreciation for leasehold improvement and improvements. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of building that is held back because we're in the phase out phase of that right now. And so I think you will see more people initiate leasehold improvement activities if they restore the bonus depreciation piece. I think those two are big from that standpoint. Other than that, there's some big ideas. I would worry that as much as tariffs sound great, they're significantly inflationary. And so, the general public's going to struggle understanding, my prices went up, but now I've made it more competitive for a U.S. company to compete against China. There's good and bad to that. And, I'm okay if we can kind of keep inflation in the single digits to restructure some things fundamentally. I would encourage everybody to accept that and move on, and you'll find a way to work it out, because labor will get their share of that increase. Whatever inflation is, in labor will probably gain in terms of economics. The question is how fast. Well, you got a pretty tight labor market. I think labor is going to flex its muscles, like we saw in the dock strikes. You're seeing some others that labor is going to be able to hold their own and negotiate, fair returns. But I still think we're in a marketplace where it's one of the toughest ever for somebody to go out and hang their shingle and start their own business. I think we're still in a marketplace that's going to take 15 competitors and shrink to 10, but those 10 are going to be much better businesses and do a much better job of serving the customer than having 15 and not enough for everybody to eat. And that I still contend there. I think there'll be some opportunities to combine with a competitor that you got sales and not enough team, they got team and not enough sales. So I think we're in a stage of look for those opportunities of either tuck-in acquisitions of a smaller competitor that is struggling, but has good resources and can be a positive add to your business, or you look for somebody that you can partner up with. I think we're entering a phase where it used to be you could be an okay business at $1 million in the contracting world. Let's say $1 million of gross margin, not $1 million in revenue. I think now you got to gravitate to that $5 million mark. Is becoming much more significant, that you got to get there if you want to stay in the game. And the pains of being at around 3 million gross margin are pretty excruciating. I mean, you're just getting the crap beat out of you, and you just don't have enough resources to deal with everything. So you either hang below a 3 million, hang around that 2 million gross margin and be kind of a boutique business and high profit, or you got to push through the 3 million and get to 5. And I think that's becoming more significant than ever.
Do you think it'll be easier in this, the Trump administration coming up to be able to do that versus where we were for the last 4 years?
Easier, yes, but not dramatically easier. Business is hard. I mean, there's a reason why entrepreneurs deserve every dollar of profit that they get, is because, you're not a real entrepreneur unless you put payroll on a credit card sometime in your life. And, and the average politician doesn't understand that. And keep in mind, I mean, Trump does not come from the operating business world. He's a real estate transactional guy. Yes, there's operations to his properties and those things, but he's not as much of an entrepreneurial thinker. I think the biggest wild card to watch is the role that Elon Musk takes, the role that Robert F. Kennedy takes in the government. Those could be massively revolutionary in business in government operations. I think they will face massive resistance, but I think it could be a game changer in terms of a reset point of the bloat of government, and it won't be clean. I mean, it wasn't clean when Musk went in and slashed 80% of the workforce of Twitter. Last time I checked, Twitter still works, and I would say it works better today than it did before he bought it. And so, and you get varying opinions of that, but as a user of it, I'm very picky about who I follow. I don't follow everybody, and all those kind of things. But I look to Twitter first before I look to Wall Street Journal second, and then just a general Google News feed third, just to get a broader sense of what's going on in the world. Yeah. Yep. And I tend to find I get more specific information, from that Twitter feed. But look at what Musk has accomplished with SpaceX, Tesla, the Boring Company, Starlink. I mean, that is a guy that runs operating businesses.
Really?
And that is an intellect that it's up here to anybody else in the game, in that process. And he's not afraid to fail. And, I mean, that's those of us that try to be innovative. I mean, you got to stick your neck out there and risk something and say this might be a brilliant idea, but the market just doesn't get it. And there's been products and services like that, for decades, that are like that. So that'll be an interesting one to see. I think certainly the other one to look at that affects construction and contracting significantly is Department of Labor policies. I think you could see a significant rollback in the overtime requirements of things and that kind of deal. And so I think I would look for, that from a bureaucratic standpoint, that certainly some of the movements that DOL was headed towards that were unworkable in the who's exempt and who's not. I think there'll be definitely pullback from that one.
Makes perfect sense. So, Greg, I appreciate you coming on here. Last, before I let you go, if I'm a contractor listening to this, what does it look like the next maybe 3 to 6 months? If you had to take a guess, what do you think that we're going to see in the next 3 to 6 months that we can prepare for?
You're gonna see a lot of leads, a lot of people come out of the woodwork. And here's what I'm going to tell you: you got to stretch the hell out of your people for the next 6 months, and don't add permanent infrastructure until we get 6 more months under our belt to see, is this going to be permanent, or is this just that bump that was paused and came back, and then now you settle into core? because the people that add infrastructure too soon, they just don't turn it off as fast as they added it. And you give back all the gain. And so what you need to do is ride this next 6-month window and harvest this gain to repair what you didn't get in the last 6 months. And then sit down. By 6 months, that's past the first 100 days of administration, which is the most critical. They lay out all their policies in the first 100 days. And so you're going to know whether or not can we forecast then a more consistent move forward. And some of that's going to be geographic. It's going to be driven by, some areas are going to certainly fare better than others. But I think in your particular market, you're going to know, okay, am I now ready to add? But you got to tell your folks, listen, we got to do everything we can with what we got for the next 6 months, unless you just have something that abjectly can't get done, so add as little to nothing as possible in your core management structure, and get back to that operational performance level, and the way, most of you are going to have to be a 2 total LER. I got to get $2 of gross margin for every dollar of labor on my team. And I got to be at a minimum 20% profit to gross margin. I don't care what profit to revenue is, profit to gross margin. And really, if you're really humming, you want to be at 25, maybe even 30. Some of our best run contractors can get temporarily, when those peak seasons are, they can run and stay okay at 30% profit to gross margin. When you get above 30, okay, sometimes that you're in the red zone there, and you just can't stay there. But if you're not at 20% profit to gross margin, you're just underperforming to a good run of the market. And I think you're going to have that here over the next 6 to 9 months.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you for coming on and giving us your insight here for the next 3 to 6 months. And listeners out there, if you're thinking like, all right, really, now is the time. Trump's in. I'm just going to start buying equipment, hiring people. Listen to Greg. Take your time. Give yourself 6 months. Let's see what happens before you start going out there and just betting the entire house on what you're doing. Get ready. The leads are going to start coming in. People are going to finally let go, regardless of who was elected. There's now certainty what's happening as far as who's going to be in the White House next. So Greg, if there's listeners out there that heard all you talking about LER and gross margin, all those kinds of things, if some of this stuff it isn't something you're used to, I know you wrote a book, Simple Numbers 2.0. Could you tell us a little bit about the book and how the listeners can reach out if they want more information on what you do?
Yeah. So I've got a speaker website that, it shows off both books. It's got several articles that we've written, that also goes a little bit further if you want to just sample, some of the simple, philosophy. So go to gregcrabtree.net. It's the speaker website, and there's links to the books that'll take you to Amazon. If you want to buy bulk copies, for your team, there's a link that'll contact us, and we can deal with you directly. If you're buying 10 or more copies, it's more effective to go through us. And then the far side, if you need help consulting, simplenumberscri.com is a website for our practice. There's a contact form there, email addresses. You can get in touch with us. And, and what we do is, and we don't have to do massive data cleanup. You can have the crappiest data in the world. As long as we have enough of it, we can make sense of it and then get you focused on your important number at this moment in time and say, hey, next month, this is what profitability looks like. Go do it. And, I don't need 12 months to fix the business. I can be fixed next month in not 99% of the cases if I'm willing to take the steps needed. And just, look at those. But I'm probably about the easiest person in the world to find. If you Google Greg Crabtree or Simple Numbers, I come up, pretty prominently. So.
I appreciate that, Greg. And listeners, I've been working with Greg and his team now for years, and they have been they've been amazing to work with. They've given us such optics into the business. Such clarity on numbers. We know what to do next based on actual evidence, not just a feeling or, it seems like it'd be a good thing to do in October or November. You know what I mean? Like, we actually know, we forecast, and it changes the game. It takes you from someone working in your business to someone working on your business, understanding those numbers and how to direct the ship forward. So if you haven't reached out yet or read his book, please do that. It'll change everything you're doing in business. So, Greg, any last thoughts here before we wrap up?
Now, now's the time to get out there and go do it. I mean, it's, we have that certainty. And so if you're not willing to compete, you better get out of somebody's way, or else you have tire tracks up your backside.
That's a great way to leave us off here. All right. Thank you, Greg, for coming on. And listeners, go out and get that book. And this next 4 years could be the best years of your life. All depends on what you decide to do with it next. So thanks, Greg.
I appreciate it.